The Malaysian state of Sabah is located in the northern portion of Borneo Island. Since 1914, the Sabah Forestry Department has been managing the rainforests of the state. Large equatorial rainforests once carpeted the landscape, and the lowlands were dominated by large dipterocarp trees. Soon after the formation of the Federation of Malaysia in 1963, Sabah relied heavily on these rainforests to bring about development to the state. In the 1970s and 80s, timber was the main revenue earner for the state. During those years, timber revenue amounted to more than 70% of the state's revenue, and the timber industry was a major provider of jobs. As a result, most of the commercial forest reserves are now lock-over forests or in the state of secondary forests. Realizing the need to sustain its forest resources, the Sabah state government commissioned the FAO UNDP Forest Sector Planning Project in 1986. This later on led to the Malaysian-German Sustainable Forest Management Project in 1989. Together, the Sabah Forestry Department and GTZ, the German Agency for Technical Aid, utilized the Ramakot Forest Reserve as a model for Sustainable Forest Management, or SFM. A few difficult and trying years later, the Ramakot Forest Reserve was certified as well managed according to the criteria set by the Forest Stewardship Council, a leading organization in forest certification. It is the world's first tropical forest area to be certified. Thus, confident of the SFM model, in September 1997, the state government decided that the successful Ramakot model of SFM be applied in all commercial forest reserves throughout Sabah. 10 SFM license agreements were signed that year to manage forests according to sustainable forest management principles. Today, there are a total of 29 SFM license agreements and long-term license holders managing about 2.3 million hectares of the state's commercial forest reserves. And the Ramakot Forest Reserve remains certified to this day. The implementation of sustainable forest management does not only concern the harvesting of timber, conserving biodiversity, and preserving ecological functions of the forests. It also takes into account of the needs of forest or local communities. In Sabah, there are about 20,000 people living within the forest reserves and many more at the fringes of the forest reserves. Most of them are hardcore poor, illiterate, having little or no access to basic facilities and amenities like sealed roads, electricity, and clean pipe water. Many still practice shifting cultivation to meet their daily needs. To these less fortunate communities, forests are sources of their food, traditional medicines, building materials, and potential agricultural lands. For many decades, forests throughout Sabah were cleared mainly for hill paddy cultivation. As the soil becomes infertile after a few planting cycles, communities clear other forest lands. Using fertilizers is not an option for these poor communities. Thus, slash-and-burn farming is one of the significant contributors to the loss of natural forests. However, in the eyes of the Sabah Forestry Department, these forests are vital for biodiversity, for their ecological functions, and as sources of state revenue. These conflicting viewpoints between forest or local communities and the Sabah Forestry Department can be solved with the department's social forestry projects. Social forestry encompasses various management strategies like agroforestry, farm forestry, community forestry, and even publicly managed forests. In Sabah, rehabilitation and restoration of forests that were degraded by forest communities can only be successful if the extreme poverty among forest or local communities is elevated or eradicated. Thus, the Sabah Forestry Department began its first social forestry program in 1984 at Kampung Minoso, Tongun. Under this program, projects were implemented adjacent and within the forest reserves that are mostly negatively impacted by the presence of local or forest communities. Our social forestry projects are generally divided into two types: provision of basic infrastructure development and joint forest management. Basic infrastructure development projects include upgrading or constructing gravel roads, bridges and culverts, building gravity-assisted water supply systems, providing electric generator sets and the necessary wiring to houses, constructing kindergartens, primary schools, constructing rural clinics, and building houses for the hardcore poor. Joint forest management projects, on the other hand, concentrate on improving the socio-economic levels of the forest or local communities through providing plots of land for permanent farming purposes to appropriate households, providing incentives to plant alternative cash crops like yam, tapioca, pineapples, vegetables, and corn, providing cash incentives to plant rubber, restore watershed areas and forest tending, providing rubber seedlings of high-quality clones, constructing fish ponds, improving irrigation of farmlands, assisting in tourism development, providing incentives to rear chickens and cultivate mushroom, training in tourism, aqua and apiculture, making handicrafts and animal husbandry. Joint forest management projects may also include small-scale infrastructure development where necessary. The social forestry program is a Herculean task undertaken by the Sabah Forestry Department. The multidisciplinary approach of its social forestry projects meant that the department cannot succeed alone. All the infrastructure built and the incentives provided cannot guarantee the success of these projects, as these projects involve huge changes in the lifestyles and the mindset of participating forest or local communities. Thus, they must be given adequate and constant training in many aspects of their new lives so that the transition from forest-dependent communities to income-generating communities goes smoothly. Realizing this fact, the department sought assistance from other government agencies like the Agriculture Department, Veterinary Department, Sabah Rubber Industry Board, and various district offices. There is also no doubt that participating NGOs such as LIP, Pakos Trust, WWF Malaysia, HSBC Bank, and many others play a huge role in the program. They provided training in home health and hygiene, making handicrafts, tourism development and management, and farming techniques. Raleigh International provided foreign volunteers to construct several kindergartens, clinic, and gravity-assisted water supply systems. The United Nations Development Programme UNDP supports community development projects worldwide, and in Sabah, it has also been instrumental in providing funds for some of the department's social development projects. For the Sabah Forestry Department, the social forestry program has shown positive impacts to the forest. Many previously degraded forests have been enriched with dipterocarps, wild fruit trees, and other fast-growing timber tree species. The rubber trees, now a source of income for forest communities, will be a source of valuable timber in the future. Forest restoration efforts in previous hill paddy lands have also restored and ecological functions of the forests. Some forest reserves, such as the Kelawar Forest Reserve in the west coast of Sabah, resumed their role as a watershed for surrounding farmlands after the forest was restored. As forest communities now have alternative sources of protein, wildlife such as deer and bearded pigs are getting more common in these areas. Since the inception of the social forestry program of the Sabah Forestry Department, more than 400 villages have benefited. Thousands of households now have increased incomes, better health care, opportunities for education, and improved road access. However, the department believes that the most important benefit is that they are empowered to plan and manage their own communities. For the Sabah Forestry Department, securing the timber stocks for future generation is the main driving force behind sustainable forest management. There are numerous rehabilitation and forest restoration projects in forest reserves throughout Sabah with the local or forest community involvement. Where there are land use conflicts with forest or local communities, the department's social forestry program is a proven way to solve them. And for as long as there are forests or local communities who are poor, this program will continue to help them.